What would you trade for success, and how much would it ultimately cost you? These are the questions Godard asks of his characters and the audience in his stunning and serious picture Le Mepris, or Contempt. Paul, played by Michel Piccoli, a playwright turned screenwriter, is asked to rewrite the script for an adaptation of the Odyssey, being directed by Fritz Lang, playing himself. At the head of this deal is sleazy American producer Prakash, played with venom by Jack Palance. Paul's wife Camille, played by the radiant Brigitte Bardot, ends up an unwilling bartering chip in this deal when one small moment of weakness from Paul will end up disintegrating their marriage and her respect for him. I was incredibly saddened last year when I heard of Jean-Luc Godard's passing. Although not one of my absolute favourite filmmakers, he was incredibly important to my film journey, being the first foreign art film director that I had explored as a teenager. Some of his films have become favourites of mine and have been repeated watches over the years. But I had only ever watched Contempt once before now, as that was enough. Aside from perhaps Vive sa vie, it is Godard's most emotionally packed and heavy film of his early era. Anyone who has ever been jilted can feel for Piccoli's character as his wife becomes more and more distant and resentful, rushing into the arms of another man. It gives me a cold, heavy feeling in my chest. But I'm glad that I've rewatched this film and can re-evaluate the scenario, as it is clear now that Paul is certainly no saint. He allows Prakash to take his wife away initially, immediately accuses her of some kind of infidelity, and then proceeds to flirt with Prakash's assistant. There is a clear breakdown on his end which sets everything in motion. Camille rightfully feels pimped out, used as an object to further Prakash's interest in working with Paul. Unlike his previous pictures, in Contempt, Godard shoots what is essentially a small-scale domestic piece in the most epically filmic of formats, CinemaScope. It is like Godard is purposely using a big scope format in order to highlight the importance of smaller domestic matters. Even in Paul and Camille's modest apartment, where we watch a marriage fall to pieces over 30 minutes, he uses the format to great effect. For a much more in-depth analysis on the visuals of this film, I would recommend checking out the episode of Observations in Film Art, which covers this film on the Criterion Channel. Along with the relatively standard and perhaps melodramatic story of the husband and wife having a tiff, there is an underlying commentary on the shackles of mainstream filmmaking. It is no surprise that Godard, of all directors, would want to speak to this. He portrays the American producer as the slimiest and scummiest man possible, who wants what he wants and takes what he desires. It is ironic that the now infamous opening featuring a nude Brigitte Bardot, who was not Godard's first or second choice, which was Kim Novak and Monica Vitti respectively, was shot after the film had wrapped at the insistence of American co-producers in order to try capitalize on Bardot's famous beauty. Godard purposely shot it like an old Hollywood post-lovemaking scene, but overlaid the French tricolour on top. A cheeky move. I will now relay a random thought I had during my viewing. At one point during the apartment scene, Paul wears his towel like a toga, and it made me consider if this is the kind of conversation that Odysseus would have had with Penelope after returning from his voyage and the dust had settled. Godard seems to confirm this later in the film when Paul and Fritz Lang walk and discuss whether Odysseus really wanted to come home or not, and how that would have affected Penelope's love for him. Parallels like this make it clear why Godard chose the Odyssey as the basis for the film within this film. So after all of this, is the film any good? The easy answer is yes. The broader answer is that it is a complicated picture. Despite the beauty of the photography and its straightforward, by Godard standards, plot, it is not an easy film to watch. The emotions are as searing as the Mediterranean sun. Its commentary on the film industry is scathing. The ending is perhaps questionable, chaotic even. French New Wave films often ended in what I would like to call punchlines, and Contempt has one even if it is not the final shot, but it is vivacious and wondrous and not in the least pretentious. Viva Godard.